In a place like this, surrounded by a wonderful selection of quality food produce, it's hard to believe that we're on the edge of a precipice. The world may be about to face a massive food shortage. During the past century, human population has been rising rapidly. There are over 5 billion more people alive today than there were in 1900. This population explosion is set to continue. By 2050, there will be 2 billion more people living on the planet than there are today. Meanwhile, growing middle classes in places like China, India, Africa and South America are demanding more and better quality food. Fulfilling this demand presents major challenges for the human race.
Reality is that by 2050, the world's population will have grown from its current 7 billion to over 9 billion at that stage. We will require approximately 70% more food to feed that world population.
If global population continues at the rate we're seeing, what you will have is scarcity of food, even in countries like Ireland, where we're a food exporting country.
Even now we are facing problems with agriculture production, because agriculture is contributing to the climate change, for example. And if we increase the production, we are increasing also the pressure on the environment.
Climate change, but also access to water, access to other resources such as land and phosphorus will be questions that we will have to face. But the other side is the access to food, the affordability of food.
The rising demand for food and higher quality produce, like meat and dairy, can be beneficial to Irish farming.
We're a very, very large food-producing nation. We have approximately 4 million people, but we produce enough meat and milk to feed 40 million people. So we are quite a significant global player.
If we take, even in the last 5 years, the emergence of middle classes in the likes of China and right across Asia, you've seen phenomenal increases in the demand for branded food products.
Under a new vision for farming, Food Harvest 2020, Irish farmers can increase dairy volume by 50% and the value-added meat sector by 20%. While potentially great news for the economy, it also presents a major challenge. The Environmental Protection Agency forecasts that Food Harvest 2020 changes could increase greenhouse gas emissions from farming by 12%. So the challenge is this: can our farmers find a way of taking advantage of the growing demand for food, while at the same time dramatically reducing the impact they have on the environment? Every one of us in Ireland has a stake in ensuring a solution is found.
Certainly, there will be a greater demand for the products that we produce in Ireland. And I have every faith that we will rise to that challenge. Can we do it in a way that we actually reduce our footprint? Can we improve the water quality? Can we improve biodiversity? Can we reduce our greenhouse gas emissions per litre of milk, per kilo of beef?
When you are talking about export potential, you need to be able to demonstrate to people now that your production is sustainable, and I think that's something that we're getting better at measuring, validating, and particularly getting external validation of.
In Ireland, scientists are exploring ways to increase agricultural production while reducing its environmental impact. They've discovered that one effective way to do this is to treasure one of Ireland's most precious commodities, our soil.
We're supporting and helping to transfer science out to farms and improve efficiency at farm level so that the farmer is supported in achieving efficiency, but also environmental benefits will arise from that.
At the heart of the solution is another major challenge. Just as we need to increase food production, the world is running short of an essential mineral that the soil requires if we need to grow food in it. This is the stuff here, the very essence of life, phosphorus.
Phosphorus is a irreplaceable and essential nutrient for plant growth. So without it, plants won't grow, and it's essential for food production for humanity.
Historically, humans have farmed only soils that were naturally rich in phosphorus. Then, during the 20th century, people began mining for phosphorus. Bags of 10-10-20, a mix of nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, became the miracle grow for the farming business. Suddenly, farm productivity exploded. But there's been a huge downside. All those phosphates seep through the soil, polluting our water systems. The phosphates encourages blue-green algae, depletes oxygen. This makes the water uninhabitable for fish and unfit for human consumption, without intensive and expensive filtering. Making the problem even worse, with global demand for phosphorus rising, the price has soared.
In Europe, we have no rock phosphate resource, so we rely on supply from outside Europe, mainly North Africa and some from Russia. If that was turned off in the morning, we would be in trouble in terms of agriculture and food security and food production.
With the demand for phosphorus rising globally, the price will inevitably continue to rise. If this keeps going, we simply won't be able to afford this vital finite resource for food production anymore. Food cannot be grown without phosphorus. If we are to increase food production, are we going to have to pollute the ground and water further? Well, science seems to have found a solution that will revolutionize farming. The key to it is being more precise in how we use our precious supplies of phosphorus.
We can't survive without phosphorus. So it's important that we use the resources or the limited reserves of phosphorus that we have on the planet very carefully.
Some Irish farmers, like Wexford-based Michael Doran, have begun to take a more scientific approach to their work, which will dramatically help overcome the phosphorus challenge. At the heart of the solution is being more accurate in assessing the productivity of their land. Michael Doran regularly measures exactly how much grass his soil is managing to produce.
The grass is key to my farm, and I need to try and maximise the amount of grass that I'm trying to grow. And I've been measuring grass here now for about 6 years, so I know what grass I'm growing on an annual basis. Measuring grass. Each one of these is a different paddock. The ones in brown are the ones that I'm currently grazing. The ones in blue are the ones that are not being grazed at the moment. So when the animals graze them out, they will be low at this cover down here, and you'll actually be putting them in to graze this one up here, the ones with the highest cover. Totally scientific, so my weekly decisions are based on what results this programme tells me every Monday morning. For me, it's very important to test the soil because I need to know what my fertility in the soil is, my phosphorus and potassium levels. The more grass that I can grow, the more animals I can produce or that I can feed, and the more that I can feed, the more output I can produce from the farm.
Farmers like Michael are discovering that simply being more accurate in measuring the exact quantity of nutrients their soil requires can increase production. Soil samples are brought to the lab, where scientists assess exactly how much phosphorus, potassium and nitrogen they contain. Scientists have found that after decades of intensive fertilizer spreading, some soil is over-rich in nutrients. So too then is the grass the cows are eating. All that phosphorus comes back out the other end in their slurry. Michael has found that all he needs to maintain the phosphorus levels in his soil is to spread cow slurry. So when is the last time now you put chemical fertilizer on your land?
The last time that I would put chemical phosphorus or potassium on the soil is about 12 years ago. So annually what I'm only putting out now is nitrogen. And each 1,000 gallons of slurry that I'm actually spreading back out on this ground is the equivalent of about 8 units of nitrogen, 7 units of phosphorus and 30 units of potassium.
So how much money is that in the total farm?
It starts to come into close on €10,000 per year.
Farmers are realising that by using it more efficiently and timely during the year, cow shit can make a huge difference to the bottom line. Healthy soil also requires a substantial amount of nitrogen. But nitrogen can vaporise to nitrous oxide when released to the atmosphere. It's 300 times more potent in global warming potential than carbon dioxide. Again, a catch-22. The soil has to get nitrogen if it is to be productive. And if farm output is to increase, more nitrogen will be required. But scientists have discovered a very simple way of getting nitrogen into the soil. The air is already rich in the stuff. And a little plant called clover, which cows love, naturally extracts nitrogen from the air and fixes it in the soil. So Michael has planted white clover throughout his land, dramatically lowering his greenhouse gas emissions and the amount of money he spends on expensive chemical nitrogen. Another radical yet affordable system that will help farmers lower their emissions is in development. I've come to Johnstown Castle to see the prototype of a drainage system that enables farmers harvest phosphorus from soil while also capturing chemicals before they harm the environment. So what's happening over here now?
So Duncan, this is our drainage treatment system here in Johnstown, and we use this system to, I suppose, recapture the phosphorus, for example, and ammonium from drainage water that would potentially be lost to the environment. We have a carbon media inside in the reactor, and the bacteria use this, they love this carbon, to convert nitrate to dinitrogen gas. So dinitrogen gas, there's 78% nitrogen in the atmosphere, and we're just returning that gas safely back to the atmosphere.
Okay, so really this is taking phosphorus and nitrogen out of the water in a typical farm?
Yes, the phosphorus is trapped by the reactive media, which can be example like zeolite or something like that. And then that phosphorus can be actually reused on the farm as fertilizer.
Right, so this is really valuable, isn't it?
This is the most important bit because phosphorus at the moment, worldwide, the reserves are decreasing, and we really need to come up with innovative ways of recycling phosphorus on farms.
When fully developed, this end-of-pipe system will allow us to recycle phosphorus from the soil. But there's another exciting, if slightly disgusting source from which we can extract phosphorus: human sewage. Everything we eat, fruit, veg, meat, is full of the stuff, and scientists have found a way to harvest phosphorus from sludge in sewage treatment plants. Once science discovers a way to safely remove harmful pathogens, phosphorus extracted from human excrement will eventually be used to fertilize food. Smart farming is all about increasing production while reducing pollution and costs. Leaving no stone unturned, scientists have focused on the farmer's most treasured tool, the tractor. Agricultural progress has always been driven by machinery. Hitching the plough to a tractor in the early 20th century was a revolution. Agricultural yields exploded, food prices plummeted, and the amount of humans on the planet jumped by 350% in a single century. Conventional ploughing, however, is not ideal. It damages soil structure. As the blades carve and overturn the soil, it releases stored carbon into the atmosphere, where it contributes to global warming. But a new kind of plough may provide the solution.
That's amazing, Dermot. Yes, there's a huge difference there, Duncan. You can see the plough obviously moving a lot of soil, taking a lot of energy, whereas the strip tillage drill just working a small amount of soil, quite shallow, much less energy, much less fuel, much less wearing cost. It's about 1/3 of the energy, Duncan. But because we're disrupting the soil less as well, we're retaining the actual soil organic matter or carbon in the soil. That's good for the environment, but it's also good for the health of the soil as well.
I love this system. It lightly scrapes small lines instead of deep furrows into the soil. There are some downsides. The strip till drill doesn't work well on wet soil. And conventional ploughing has the advantage of keeping weeds at bay. On the plus side, farmers save time and money because the strip till drill plants seeds as it goes, saving the need for making the entire journey all over again. And that saves diesel and CO2 emissions.
How much diesel could they save? Somewhere in the region of 20 litres of fuel per hectare during this type of operation. So that's a sizable amount of fuel.
I wonder though, if this takes off, would it spell the end of the ploughing championship? Now, that would never do. Some of those tractors that drove the agricultural revolution are still alive and kicking. And it turns out that they've a few lessons to teach us about farming.
Great. It's wonderful to be on. I haven't been on one of these since I was a child.
Right, 1950s technology.
1950s, and it's a great little machine, isn't it?
But the reason we have it here today, Duncan, is just to contrast that with the modern tractor.
God, the difference. Isn't it amazing?
Yes, same design, same basic function.
Modern tractors are on average 8 times heavier than the old machines. But that means they could potentially do 8 times the damage to the soil on which they travel.
If we're looking at compaction, a key issue is the size of tyre. We're trying to spread the load on the soil to prevent the machine actually damaging the soil or compressing the soil. Because if we compress the soil, we actually damage the soil structure, we prevent the roots of the soil getting access to nutrients, and we can actually impact on the yield of the crop. We can reduce crop yields, and that effect can be a very long-lasting effect. And we need even larger tyres than these to get back to the sort of ground pressures that we had 50 years ago on older equipment.
Well, Dermot, that was great. But what about a quick race? I'll take this one.
Okay, let's go.
Don't need no preacher man to tell me right from wrong. Don't need no real estate to prove I belong. Don't need no passenger to tell me where to go. Don't need no travel guide to go and steal the show. Just me in the open road, got it going on.
90% of Ireland's agricultural land is grazed. Our mild climate and rich soil produces lush grass on which our cattle and sheep thrive. The remaining 10% is cultivated with crops and vegetables. Intensive cultivation requires pesticides to keep disease at bay. These pesticides are damaging to biodiversity. The global decline in bee populations in recent years, for example, has been attributed to pesticides. In Ireland, one of our most important crops is the potato. Its single greatest enemy is blight, which can kill an entire crop if it has not been treated with fungicides. We need to find alternatives to spraying pesticides and fungicides. And in Oak Park, County Carlow, Teagasc scientists are underway with a controversial experiment.
So what we have here, Duncan, are GM potatoes.
GM?
Yeah, it's one of the most contentious issues in modern day science at the moment, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be investigating it. It's an important project for Teagasc, and that's why we're involved in this EU-wide Amiga project.
Why would we be looking at GM crops?
Well, first of all, GM is probably the most emotive debate in modern day science. There's no bias, it's a hypothetical research project, so there could be a positive or a negative answer at the end of it. Our cropping systems in Ireland, one of them obviously potato, faces very serious challenges in the years ahead. The disease blight disease has evolved itself and is continuously evolving, as all diseases do. But we have new strains emerging which have developed certain amounts of fungicide resistance. They're much more aggressive, can destroy a crop if unchecked, can just go through a field of potatoes in a week to 10 days and completely obliterate the crop.
Teagasc are planting different types of potato to see which offers the best protection from blight without pesticides. They're being careful to keep these crops well removed from any other to ensure there's no cross-fertilisation, which would allow the GM breed to contaminate other potato crops in Ireland. What they want to discover is which, over the long term, will prove most resistant to disease.
So for potatoes now at this stage, would the small tubers be starting to be developed?
Absolutely. These guys were planted probably 4 to 5 weeks ago. And as you can see in here, we're starting to see the first of the small tubers appear on here.
And the potatoes now that these produce, are they similar to the conventional potato for the same variety?
They look the exact same. There's no difference at all. The only difference between this plant and the non-GM is that that single gene induces a durable resistance response, effectively very similar to you getting an immunization jab against for MMR or something like that. It immunizes the plant against blight. But of course, the question is how durable is that? And that's really what we want to study.
And does this mean that these particular crops will not require any spraying of any chemicals or pesticides or fungicides?
That's exactly what we're researching right now.
And of course, Ireland had massive problems with blight, with our famine.
Yeah, it hasn't gone away. In fact, it's gotten much worse. Up to maybe 2008, farmers would typically have sprayed every maybe 10 days, spraying probably up to 10 times per year on their potato crop. So people don't realise that when they go to the chipper on a Friday evening for a bag of chips, those spuds that are in that bag took a lot of fungicides to get them in there to make sure that the farmer can have an economic yield from his input and his time and his crop. But now, since 2008, we have new strains of blight have emerged into Ireland, and new strains have migrated across from mainland Europe, and these strains are much more aggressive, and they overwinter much more, so they're a much greater challenge to potato growing in Ireland. So how do we combat it? You know, there's no point in just sitting back and moaning about the situation we have. We need to look ahead and see what's over the horizon. And some people have said this is one solution, but we're not going to make any decision until we complete the research.
GM, of course, remains controversial. Critics rightly point out how some multinationals are controlling the supply of GM in developing countries and forcing a monopoly on poor farmers. At the same time, GM plants may have helped increase yields across the world while using less water, pesticides and chemicals. GM, if carefully regulated for the benefit of the entire human race, can help feed the world. However, until more evidence-based research is done, I'm glad that Ireland remains a GM-free zone. Agriculture is driving the Irish economy. At the heart of our success is Ireland's reputation for being clean and green. Irish farmers can maintain that reputation by using science to lower the impact they have on the environment as they increase the amount of food they produce for the world.
At a national level, what I can say to you is that the food and drink sector turns over about 30 billion euros, of which 24 to 25 billion stays in the Irish economy. Typically, for every one job in food manufacturing, there are 4 other jobs in the Irish economy. So it's the biggest injector of employment potential. There is no other sector that has its supply chain and its economic roots right into the local economy, and that's why it's so big and important in an Irish economy context.
If we're true to sustainability, we have to sort out our problems this generation, not next generation. So we have to do it for ourselves first and for the international community second. Yes, if we do it and do it correctly, there's a real win for Ireland because we can hold our head up high and we can use that then to drive the economic recovery in this island, but in a way that is sustainable, but sustainable for my children, for my neighbours' children, and for their children's children. That's why we should be doing it.